All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Michael Colgrove, and I'm the Executive Director of Energy Trust of Oregon. I'm also joined this afternoon by Monica Williams, one of our talent acquisition partners and from our Human Resources Department, who is supporting the recruitment of this position. As you've seen, Energy Trust is currently recruiting for a new director of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Services team. Please note that since we're using Zoom's webinar format today, your participation should remain anonymous unless you change those settings. Some of you may have already submitted some questions through our website, and I'll be addressing those later in the presentation. But if anyone does have questions throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen to submit your questions or comments, and I will address those at the end of the presentation. So during the next hour, I will be introducing you to the Energy Trust of Oregon and to our existing diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. I'll provide an overview of the Director of DEI Services position and the team that it will manage, and then I'll discuss our application process, or more correctly, I'll turn it over to Monica, who will discuss our application process. We'll wrap up, as I mentioned, by addressing any questions or comments that you may submit throughout the presentation. So first, wanted to start off with a little bit about who Energy Trust is and what we do. So Energy Trust is an independent, nonprofit organization that began operations in 2001. We currently administer the majority of Oregon's energy efficiency and renewable energy programs on behalf of the customers of 5 of the state's investor-owned utilities. We support these utility customers with cash incentives, with expertise, and other offers to help them save energy and to invest in renewable energy resources like solar. We now serve most electric utility customers throughout Oregon and almost all natural gas customers, as well as natural gas customers in Southwest Washington. The majority of our work is funded by the customers of our 5 partner utilities, those being Portland General Electric, Pacific Power, Northwest Natural, Cascade Natural Gas, and Avista. So you're probably familiar with this, but an organization's vision statement really tries to describe or say what the world will look like when we achieve what we want to achieve as an organization. Energy Trust's current vision statement is clean, affordable energy for everyone. When we work towards this vision, we are not only helping save and generate energy for its own sake, although that is one of our core functions, but we are also enriching Oregon's communities to help make people safer and ready for the future. This slide here shows our utility service areas in the state of Oregon. The shaded areas are where our customers are. As you can see, we serve customers all across the state, but our service area is far from being one large connected space. While Energy Trust is headquartered in Portland and much of our staff are based in the Portland metro area, we do have a number of staff who live in the communities they serve and work throughout our service area. And we're always looking for new staff who live beyond the Portland metro area. So let me spend a moment at a high level describing why we administer energy efficiency and renewable energy programs. One of the cheapest and most reliable forms of power is what we don't have to use or generate. That makes energy efficiency among the least expensive energy resources available. These savings and generation results keep utilities from having to build expensive new infrastructure or purchase additional power to meet growing energy demand. Those utility investments would drive up overall energy costs for ratepayers, meaning that our work actually plays a part in keeping utility rates lower than they may otherwise have been. In short, it costs less to save energy than to generate energy from fossil fuels. Ratepayers actually save more than $3 for every dollar invested in efficiency. And since 2002, Energy Trust has invested $2.6 billion of customer utility funds. Clean energy systems also produce fewer emissions and the 39 million tons of carbon dioxide that our investments have kept out of the atmosphere are equivalent to removing 9 million cars from Oregon roads for 1 year. It is our responsibility to design programs to give all of our customers a meaningful opportunity to directly benefit from our services, including those that we have underserved in the past, what we refer to as our priority customers. Over the past number of years, we have determined that these priority customer groups include customers with low and moderate incomes, communities of color, people living and working in rural communities, and small businesses, especially those owned by women and people of color. And this effort to meaningfully serve all of our customers is collectively referred to as our DEI initiative. Since our first diversity, equity, and inclusion plan in 2018, we've learned that to effectively accomplish this initiative, we need to focus on building relationships and focusing on greater collaboration with the communities that we're working to serve. That's why our current DEI plan focuses on community engagement as a key strategy of our DEI initiative. The plan describes a framework for building trust and relationships with community members, community-based organizations, and other stakeholders, and lays out the key goals, outcomes, and metrics associated with this framework. Our DEI plan is designed to serve as a living document that we will periodically revisit and update to reflect the lessons learned and changing needs. You can read our current DEI plan along with other resources on our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion webpage, which is linked within our recruitment flyer for the director position. Along with the metrics laid out in our DEI plan, the Oregon Public Utility Commission, who oversees our administration of customer funds, has also established a set of metrics that create a minimum performance requirement for us to demonstrate progress in serving environmental justice communities. These metrics are revisited and updated annually, and together with the metrics in our DEI plan and others that may be established by the DEI Services team, are an important element of this director's responsibilities. So here are some examples of how community engagement shows up in the work of our DEI initiative. Through the Community Partner Funding Program, which is a component of our residential program services, Energy Trust invests in partnerships with community-based organizations and community action agencies who have already built trust with community members. These organizations are able to build awareness of clean energy opportunities and programs. Through their partnership with us, community partners are able to provide our highest incentive levels to their community members. One of those community partners is Community Action of Washington County, which does whole home weatherization projects for customers with low incomes. Energy Trust combines its incentives with Oregon Housing and Community Services funds to help each customer do more or larger improvements to their homes, which are typically free to the customer. In 2021 and 2022, Energy Trust provided nearly $300,000 in co-funding for community action customers. Our community partner funds allowed Community Action of Washington County to serve 36 additional customers than they otherwise would have been able to support, bringing the total number of households served in that period to 102. One second. Okay. So just there was a request in the chat to turn on captions, which I was just able to do. I did turn them on in English. If anybody needs them in another language, just let me know. Another example of community engagement shows how Energy Trust is exploring pathways to bring the benefits of rooftop solar to communities of color. This year, we worked with community organizations to explore outreach and education methods that increase awareness and access to residential solar among Black, Indigenous, and people of color homeowners in the Portland metro area, communities that have disproportionately low awareness of solar. Energy Trust and community-based organizations developed curriculum to educate representatives from communities, who we refer to as solar ambassadors, about solar so that they can then in turn engage their neighbors locally. One of these solar ambassadors is Sammy Lewis, featured here, who is also a participant in Energy Trust programs. This actually proved to be such an effective strategy that Energy Trust will be offering the program again this year in 2024. Okay, so before you can fully understand the role and responsibilities of the Director of DEI Services, I think it's helpful to understand the function of the DEI Services team within Energy Trust. At its core, the DEI Services team is the steward of Energy Trust's DEI initiative, which really does encompass all of the activities of the organization that support that purpose of providing more meaningful opportunities for our priority customer groups. It is currently envisioned to consist of 3 positions: the director, who leads and manages the team, a senior level position, and then a specialist or entry to mid-level position. The specific roles and responsibilities of each individual would be determined by the director. The senior level position would be hired by the new director shortly after their onboarding this year, and the specialist position to be hired, it's currently planned to be hired or recruited for in 2025. And this DEI services team essentially serves this function of steward by performing 4 key responsibilities. First, the team acts as an in-house consultant, becoming familiar with our work, our programs, our relationships, and our goals and objectives. It helps to identify areas where we could do better at applying the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then working with those involved in those areas to improve their work. The team would provide leadership, advice, support, and resources to ensure that everyone at Energy Trust is working to achieve the goals of our DEI initiative. Second, the DEI services team sponsors our internal DEI committee. This committee is comprised of representatives from around the organization and includes 3 to 4 external members from organizations we work closely with. The committee is responsible for creating, maintaining, implementing, and tracking on the goals embodied in our DEI plan related to community engagement. The committee is organized to be self-functioning, but does rely on the expertise and resources of the DEI services team to achieve its objectives. Third, this team would work closely with our equity partner in human resources, which is a position we'll be recruiting for in just a couple of months, to identify training and development needs among our staff, our contractors, and our partners. The equity partner would be responsible for training that focuses on the basic tenets and concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Think microaggressions, privilege, systemic racism, unconscious bias, etc. The equity partner would also provide or arrange for supervisor or manager training on burnout and supporting our staff of color. The DEI services team would focus more on the application of these concepts and how they show up in our day-to-day work. This might include cultural awareness and sensitivity trainings for specific types of customers and communities, or training on the basic approaches to community engagement and how to work beyond simply informing communities to actually co-creating solutions that meet their needs. And then lastly, the team manages our Diversity Advisory Council, what we refer to as the DAC. It's a group of external advisors from throughout the state who help to shape our programs, our relationships and engagements, and other key aspects of our work. The team acts as the organizer and staff liaison to the DAC, helping to identify areas they want to better understand, helping to prepare agendas for their meetings, coordinating presentations, and discussions from others in and beyond the organization. As the head of the DEI Services team, the director needs to perform specific roles and responsibilities, many of which have been identified in the posting. I'd like to call out a few that are of particular importance. The first relates to the director's role on Energy Trust's executive committee. So our executive team, is the leadership group of the organization. Each of the bars here represents a functional group within our organization, each of which is led by a director. Together, the directors make up the executive team, which leads the organization. As a member of this group, you would participate in the strategic conversations and decisions made by this group to guide the direction of the organization. Through our respective teams, we help to ensure that these decisions are understood by staff, by the board, and our stakeholders, and that we're all working together to achieve them. So I just want to point out a few of these bars here. The first bar is represented by me, and it's our executive group. It comprises my role, but also our executive assistant and our organizational development manager. We also have a communications and customer services group, which helps to communicate our results and benefits, helps to connect policymakers with our expertise, and works to engage communities and customers with information and solutions. That team is led by Amber Cole. And then led by Tracy Scott is our energy programs group. They're responsible for strategy and management for all of our energy programs, and that includes our program marketing team and our program operations team. Chris Dunning leads our finance group, which is responsible for all of our financial operations, including audits, banking, budget, financial reporting, and analysis. They manage all of our payments, including to vendors, our incentive payments, and our payroll. Our people services group provides compensation, benefits, and professional development support for staff, as well as managing our hiring process. And that group is led by Amanda Solis. Our Information and Technology Services group, led by Scott Clark, manages the organization's overall data strategy and develops new technology solutions to accomplish our business needs. They help to maintain the information systems that keep our organization running. The group consists of our IT team, our project management office, and our planning and evaluation team, which is led by the next bar, and the director of that group is Fred Gordon. Our planning and evaluation group helps to determine how much energy efficiency the organization can achieve and works to evaluate the performance of our programs and outcomes. We then have an innovation and development group who helps to identify and pursue new funding opportunities and to build capacity to support new areas of work. That team is led by Lizzie Rubidoux. And finally, led by Debbie Menashe, our legal and contracts group ensures that we are complying with policies and managing risk, and also includes our board services manager who provides support for our board of directors. And then lastly, as you can see on the slide, is our DEI Services Director, and that is the position we're currently recruiting for. So in addition to your role on the executive team, it's imperative that this position really work to develop a thorough and comprehensive understanding of Energy Trust's past performance and results, our current efforts, and our planned activities. To be fully successful as an in-house consultant, the director and the DEI services team generally will need to be curious. They'll need to ask questions to establish strong interpersonal relationships and connections, and use their expertise to help identify potential solutions to support the work of others. The director will also serve as the head of our DEI initiative, and will need to first understand how, how DEI services interacts with the rest of our organization as they carry out the DEI initiative. Our outreach team, we have a newly formed communities and new initiatives team, our human resources team, the internal DEI committee that I've already mentioned, the diversity advisory council that I've already mentioned, and others, all have very specific roles in better serving our priority customers. And the director of DEI services really needs to be able to clearly communicate those roles and to help ensure that efforts are complementary and not duplicative, or worse, even at odds with one another. So these are just some of the roles and responsibilities of this position. I do encourage anyone interested in applying to carefully review the posting and position description for that more comprehensive overview. Okay, so we understand that there's a variety of experience that applicants may possess that would qualify them for this position. Here are just a few key elements that we believe are essential to successfully carrying out the responsibilities of the director position. First, applicants must be able to demonstrate expertise with the core concepts and principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion and how they apply to organizational performance. We're also looking for applicants that have experience building new teams, especially within an existing organization, and providing them the support necessary to thrive. This really includes being able to match an individual's strengths with the needs of the team and the organization, and to assign them responsibilities that they're likely to succeed at. As anyone familiar with DEI knows, its application can and frequently does involve challenging and emotional conversations. This work goes beyond business concerns and typically impacts people personally. The director will need to engage staff in ways that honors the confidentiality of the conversations and create spaces of psychological safety to explore these topics. Similarly, applicants should also be aware of the personal impact that this work can have on themselves, as well as on members of their team, and be prepared to advocate for the resources and tools that help heal and address these impacts. And lastly, I want to particularly call out the need for curiosity. A successful director of DEI services will have a genuine interest in the workings of the organization. They will recognize that to fully help Energy Trust grow and actually better serve our priority customers, they'll need to understand not only how we work now and what our restrictions are, but what we're really trying to accomplish. While the solutions actually may end up being similar to what you've experienced in other jobs, it's the process or the journey that really matters. Relationships built on sincerity and trust are the most important tools to achieving the responsibilities of this position. Okay, with that, I'm going to end here by just giving you an overview of our values before I turn it over to Monica. This is a list of our organizational values. These were actually collectively created by our staff, and they're what excites us to get up and come to work every day. It's important that everyone at Energy Trust embrace and practice these values on a daily basis. They are foundational, and they are really the core of who we are as an organization. So I want to take just a moment and read each one out loud. We listen. Everyone brings value, and every idea brings opportunity. We need all perspectives to innovate and succeed. We care about each other. Our teammates support and inspire. Together, we'll build a better future. We make a difference. Our work is important to people and the planet. We are curious. Asking questions and learning from experiences are key to our success. We work hard to find solutions. We take action to remove barriers and advance new approaches. And we are transparent. Everyone benefits when we explain our work and report our results. Transparency builds trust. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Monica Williams with our Human Resources team to take a few moments and talk a little about what to expect from working at Energy Trust. Monica?
Thanks, Michael. Welcome, everyone. So Energy Trust's employees are required to actually live within either Washington or Oregon. They're not required to live within the Portland metro area. And in fact, we encourage the hiring of staff who live throughout our service territory. We have an office in downtown Portland, and while staff are encouraged to utilize the space, we do have a fully flexible work policy. Staff can work from home, from our downtown Portland office, or from any other space that suits their needs. We do provide an annual stipend to staff to support their in-home office setup, which is intended to help cover the cost of office furniture, internet, and phone connections. We provide a laptop and monitor as well as other essential office supplies. Staff should expect to come into the office at least 12 times per year, but the specific number depends on the needs of their teams and their manager's requests. We do conduct 4 mandatory in-person office meetups throughout the year, and staff living beyond a 90-mile radius are eligible for travel and hotel reimbursement for those required trips to Portland. We also offer a work from anywhere policy that allows staff to work anywhere outside of Oregon or Washington for up to 4 weeks per year. We rely predominantly on the Microsoft Teams platform to conduct virtual and hybrid meetings, although staff are also expected to be able to use Zoom. Each team has created a team agreement which describes communication preferences, timeliness of responses, expected availability, and etc. And the director of DEI Services will be expected to create one with their team. Lastly, we do strongly encourage in-person connections through creative options like wellness walks, social hours, lunches, etc. Not all in-person engagement needs to occur in the office. In addition to work-life balance, Energy Trust offers competitive benefits to cover the whole individual. We offer 2 medical plans where we cover 92% of the healthcare premium for employees and their dependents, with the remaining 8% contributed by your employees through a biweekly payroll deduction. The table shared here gives a breakdown on the premium cost per pay period depending on the tier you'd like to enroll. Medical coverage includes vision insurance, and we also offer 2 dental plan options for you to choose from. While this is just a snapshot of our medical premiums, there is a full benefit summary for 2024 offerings on our website. Energy Trust provides a 401k, our employees are eligible for up to 3 weeks of paid vacation annually and 2 floating holidays per calendar year. Vacation accruals increase after 3, 6, and 10 years of service, and we also provide 10.5 days of paid holiday leave. Our new hires are allotted 40 hours of paid sick leave at their hire date and accrue 8 hours of sick time per month. Energy Trust provides a 401k retirement plan where eligible employees can contribute to this plan through a voluntary pre-tax salary deduction. We contribute 6% of an employee's salary to the 401k account regardless of participation level. Employees are eligible after 3 months, and employer contributions are fully vested. Caring for mental health is a vital component to our employees, and we're really excited to offer Headspace subscriptions to our employees and their dependents. Finally, we provide an annual pass for public transportation and can work with you to create a flexible work schedule and support learning and growth through professional development opportunities, as well as tuition reimbursement.
All right. Before we wrap up, I just want to provide a high-level review of the application and selection process. All applications must be submitted through our website, and while they're not explicitly required, we do strongly encourage you to consider including a cover letter. If you've ever reviewed resumes for a position, you probably know that there's only so much you can glean in terms of a potential candidate's qualifications from a resume. A cover letter really lets you address some of the key criteria that we might be looking for and how you uniquely meet those criteria. It really is an opportunity for you to stand out and promote yourself before the interview process even begins. Applications are due by Friday, January 12th at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. After about a week to conduct our initial screening of the applications, we hope to begin interviews by mid-January to early February. There will be 4 rounds of interviews with internal staff, a member of our Diversity Advisory Council, a few of the directors from the executive team, and myself. If all goes as scheduled, we anticipate a start date of mid to late March, depending, of course, on the final candidate's availability. Okay, so going to leave this up for a moment so that you have some of those links if you haven't seen them already. The Energy Trust 2024 benefits link is there, and that Monica just mentioned. So you can take a look at that if you have further interest in the details of our benefits. We have received a couple of questions in the Q&A, and I'll take a moment here to respond to those. So the first question is about, have we performed any assessments that have provided insights into what barriers are impacting cultural communities having access to or participating in Energy Trust programs? And if so, what were the basic findings? The answer to that, the quick answer to that is yes, we've performed quite a few assessments. Keeping in mind, we do serve across a variety of sectors, so the residential, commercial and businesses, as well as industrial and agricultural. And there are a number of priority customer groups. So we may not have done a deep dive into each one of those across every sector, but we do have quite a bit of market analysis, market research, everything from Black-owned small businesses to rural agricultural customers to residential customers who are experiencing low or moderate incomes. Generally speaking, it's really hard to summarize the basic findings because they are in some cases, very specific to the customer group and to the program or the sector that they belong in. But some of the examples of the findings that we've uncovered have to do with things almost as basic as just providing information in multiple languages to help customers for whom English is not a primary language be able to relate or get the information more readily. To, like I mentioned earlier, really engaging with community-based organizations, those organizations really embedded in their specific communities who have already built trust and have built an awareness where Energy Trust may not have name recognition or may not have the kind of reputation or awareness that we would prefer. These other organizations can really help deliver those messages, help to extend our incentives, our program offerings to their customer groups. In some cases, it's a matter of the types of technologies or measures that we promote, maybe not being the right fit. Small businesses is a good example of that, where we may need to look beyond our traditional measure mix, as we call it, the types of technologies we provide incentives for, and really think about what those customers need or have in terms of efficiency opportunities. So yes, we have done assessments. There's more that we need to do, and I think that's going to be a real key role of this position, is becoming familiar with the assessments we've done and looking for gaps, like where can we glean new information to help the program teams really deliver meaningful programs. There's also a question around when I mentioned that the values created by the staff, a question about how broad was that involvement, what was that process like? Essentially, it was the entire staff of the organization at the time. Energy Trust, just a little background for a moment, Energy Trust does 5-year strategic planning. And every time we do a new strategic plan, we step back for a moment, engage the entire organization, and really talk about how would you characterize the values of this organization? We created our last strategic plan back in 2018, 2019. It encompasses the years 2020 through 2024. So we're actually getting ready to create a new strategic plan. And back then we hired a facilitator to come in, ran us through a number of exercises, thought exercises, thinking about stuff like if you were to write a headline in a newspaper about working at Energy Trust, or 5 years from now there is an article about Energy Trust, what would it say? It's kind of going through those types of exercises to really draw out, like, what are the core elements of working for Energy Trust? What do they look like? How would you characterize them? And from that, we sort of converged around that list of values that I talked about. It was a great process, and we're actually going to be repeating that in May of this year as we create this next strategic plan, as I mentioned. So there's also a question about why now to hire for this role and create the DEI services team. Great question. We actually we started this journey of really establishing a group within the organization with this type of responsibility, I would say back in 2018 or so. And the first level of position that we had for this was not at the director level. And what we really learned through this whole process and the experience that we had with that initial position, with the initial work when we established our DEI initiative, was really that we need a position at the executive level whose responsibility is to oversee this work. And we also needed more people dedicated to this than we had at the time available. There have been some changes within Energy Trust regarding the number of people that we can hire. And so we really find ourselves in a position now where we can expand the membership of this team. And as I mentioned, there are going to be 3 members to this team. That's just the initial thinking about it. I fully would expect the director, when they come on board and start assessing the needs of the organization, if there is a need for more people on this team to help support that DEI initiative, we would definitely take a look at those recommendations and look to expand the DEI services team as needed. There's also a question here about what outreach has been done with Indigenous communities, and does Energy Trust support rural Indigenous communities? Great question. We actually have what we call a tribal advisory group. Members of, I don't know if they're members of quite all 9 of the federally recognized tribes in Oregon, but there are members of each of the tribes that participate on this advisory council with us. They help us understand the needs of each individual tribe. I'm sure from asking the question, you're very familiar with the fact that Indigenous communities are not homogenous. Each one has their own needs. They have their own experiences that need to be taken into consideration when we are talking about the benefits of clean energy solutions with them. And so this advisory group helps us to think through our offerings for Indigenous communities and really customize them to meet the needs there and build those relationships. We actually have a number of really successful projects throughout the state with each of the tribes. A couple of the tribes are very progressive in this space, and we've done quite a bit of work with them. So yeah, we've done a lot of support with the rural Indigenous communities, but there's always more to do. And so we're definitely looking to find ways to continue that effort. Somebody else also asked or noted that they'd already submitted a resume and cover letter. And now that they have a better understanding of the position, would we be able to submit a new application to sort of better highlight our experience in relation to this role? Monica, do you want to take a moment and think about the answer to that? I'm assuming the answer is yes, but how would you want them to go about doing that?
Yes, if you've already submitted your application materials, obviously you're leaving from this webinar with some new information. We're more than welcome to accept your updated materials, and you can email those materials to careers@energytrust.org.
Thank you. Let's see. Yep.
We have some more questions.
Yep. They're kind of in both the chat and the Q&A.
Mhm.
Another question in the chat around, do we have employee resource groups? We do. Monica, do you want to talk about that at all? Or do you want me to cover that one?
You can cover that one.
Yeah, so we do, we actually have, I'm trying to think right now exactly which ones we've had. We've had some come and go. Our most active one is our BIPOC ERG. But we've had, actually, I think we actually have a parents ERG, if I'm still current on that. And we used to have
Elderly parenting group.
Yeah, elderly. Do we still have that one, Monica?
Yes.
Yeah. So we do, and like I said, one of the more active ones, I think they're all active, but we've gotten such great engagement, particularly with the BIPOC ERG group, in thinking about different ways to support BIPOC staff, making sure they have the opportunities that everybody else in the organization has, and really helping supervisors understand things like the mental and physical impacts of microaggressions on a day-to-day basis, really feeding into some of the development work that the human resources team is working on, things like that. So we do have employee resource groups. We also have the ability for anybody on staff, if you want to create a new one, there's a pretty quick and simple process by contacting our human resources group and working to put a new one together. Then I think going back to Q&A, what has allowed Energy Trust to be able to expand as planned? I think that may have been a question on my comment earlier about being able to grow this team. The answer is a little bit complicated without going into a whole lot of background, but essentially, because we administer ratepayer funds, and I mentioned the Oregon Public Utility Commission earlier, who oversees our administration of those ratepayer funds. While we're not, explicitly a state agency and we don't administer taxpayer dollars, we do take very seriously our stewardship of ratepayer funds, as does the Oregon Public Utility Commission. And they have a variety of performance metrics that we have to meet every year to demonstrate that stewardship. One of the performance measures in the past had been a very strict administrative and staffing cost percentage of our total revenue. And that had actually limited us to really hiring no more than 1 to 3 people a year. There have been some changes in the industry recently. Decarbonization is now a very significant, state goal. And it's really allowed the Oregon Public Utility Commission and us to rethink the types, the numbers of staff that we have, the resources we have available to meet these very aggressive goals for the state. And essentially, it has been a relaxation of some of those performance measures that have enabled us to grow in ways that are really supporting the mission, and particularly like the DEI initiative, and adding staff to support that work. There's another comment and question about, we highlighted on our website that accountability is built into everything we do. What does accountability currently look like in regards to DEI at Energy Trust, and what do we hope it looks like moving forward? Great question. Accountability is always a topic that comes up, and quite frankly, I'll say it's always something we're looking to continue to work to improve. At its core, accountability at Energy Trust, and this isn't just in regards to DEI, it applies to everything we do. First and foremost, relates to that transparency value that I mentioned earlier. We do regular reporting on our progress towards our savings and generation goals, on our progress towards our diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. We do quarterly reports to the OPUC that are publicly available. We provide regular reports to our advisory councils. So I've only mentioned the DAC, the Diversity Advisory Council, but we have two others, our Conservation Advisory Council and our Renewable Energy Advisory Council. They're all comprised of different members and experts within the industry and communities that we serve. And so we report regularly to them on our progress and the goals that we've established for ourselves. And then we are also, like any nonprofit, we're governed by a volunteer board of directors. And that board of directors holds us accountable as an organization for the goals that we establish and the work that we're trying to do. So that's kind of a small snippet of some of the accountability we do now. I would say also, in answer to the question about what it looks like moving forward, any nonprofit is ultimately accountable to the communities it serves. But I do think that many nonprofits struggle with exactly what that means, and more importantly, how to really put that into practice. And I do think that accountability can and should come from the communities that we serve. So how are they aware? How are they participating in? What is their role in establishing the goals and objectives of our organization? What is their involvement in the ways that we design and implement our programs? And ultimately, what are they doing? You know, what is their role in holding us accountable for that? So I think that's something that I personally would like to see us move more towards in the future. And again, I think that would be a really important role for not only this director position, but for the entire DEI services team, really helping to guide and direct the organization towards that. There's another question around how does the trust address barriers with landlords who are unwilling to improve their property? So how does Energy Trust address barriers with landlords who are unwilling to improve their properties? Another great question. The multifamily situation will always probably be a situation that in this industry is a challenging one. And I will say that first, we have to recognize we're not going to be able to serve everybody, regardless of what sector you're in. There are some people who are just very resistant to energy efficiency, believe it or not. But what we do generally do when we're working with a landlord who even remotely has some interest in improving their property is to help them understand from their perspective what the benefits are, not just in making their properties more attractive or compliant, but supporting their tenants or their residents. One of the challenges, and I'm sure if you ask this question, you're kind of aware of this, is how do you do this in a way that doesn't encourage or promote gentrification? That is a significant challenge. There are some tools that we have available in terms of contract restrictions, for instance, not being allowed to increase rents. Unfortunately, we're not a housing regulatory body, so we can't go to that level of really enforcing that type of thing. But there are some creative ways that we can encourage landlords or require landlords to keep their properties affordable, keep their properties prevent them from being gentrified just because they're improving the value, the comfort, the appearance, any of that kind of stuff of their properties. So it is a challenging balancing act, and I'm not going to sit here and say that we've found the exact solution. Personally, I have worked in the multifamily sector my entire career, starting back in New York City. And so I'm very familiar with the barriers you're addressing, you're bringing up here. They will remain and probably, unfortunately, always will be a significant challenge. Personally, I think there are some legal or legislative solutions that could be adopted to address that. And we're always interested in looking to what we can do to support that kind of a solution. The next question here is, what type of support, guidance, and consultation do you see this position supporting the executive director with? And who would this position report to? Thank you. Sorry, I think that was an oversight in the presentation. Let me answer the first question. The second question first. This position does report to me as the executive director. All of the directors on the executive team, with the exception of one or two, do report to me directly. And so this director of DEI services would be reporting to me. And I think the types of support and guidance that they would be providing me is the same support and guidance that they'd be providing as a member of the executive team. Energy Trust's leadership, just as a slight aside here, is kind of it's a consensus-based leadership organization. I rarely make sort of unilateral decisions as executive director, even though the ultimate decision-making does fall to me in case, in the event that there's a true tie or a true, we can't reach consensus. But the culture at Energy Trust among the leadership team really has been consensus driven. What do we need to do to bring all the leadership together to support the solution that we're proposing or advocating for? And sometimes, that gets to somebody who may still disagree with the approach, but agrees with the process, understands the consensus, and then is fully supportive and will fully back the approach that we're working towards. So that's the same sort of support and guidance. I think this position would be providing that support and guidance to the entire executive team, just like we all do to one another. We each bring our area of expertise to the topic at hand, to the decision at hand, and ultimately work together to come up with that consensus decision. Which team was responsible for building the relationships with diverse communities, which will now be the work of the DEI team? Will that legacy team be a partner with the DEI team in the work? Good question. And I think this is a place for me to also do some clarification. The work of the DEI team is actually not going to be building those relationships with diverse communities. We have an outreach team already. That outreach team does build a lot of those relationships and is responsible for those relationships. But we also have contractors that we engage with who help to implement our programs. They have outreach staff who are out there building relationships and bringing projects into our programs, things like that. So relationship development generally is a very dispersed activity within the organization. Again, our outreach team does a lot of that, is responsible for a lot of that work, but they're not solely responsible for it. You can think of the DEI team, the DEI services team, more in the role of, say, for instance, through our community engagement plans, we recognize or we realize, hey, our program staff are really interested in engaging, say the Asian and Pacific Islander community more. Like we know that there's work, there's projects out there. We'd really like to support those communities in adopting clean energy solutions. How do we go about doing that? We're not asking the DEI services team to go out and make introductions to the Asian and Pacific Islander communities, but what we might be asking them to do is some cultural sensitivity training. Maybe bringing in a few members of those communities and organizing a training for those program staff to better understand what are the cultural differences between Koreans versus Southern Chinese or whatever the different groups might be. Like, how can we help our staff as they go out to build those relationships to be more sensitive and aware to the cultural differences, the priorities of different cultural groups, the needs and experiences of those cultural groups. So you can think of the DEI services teams more as enabling those relationships and not necessarily being responsible for building them directly. We do have staff who are responsible for that already. All right, and I think maybe, let's see, one more here in the Q&A, and oh no, it looks like there's two more, and I just want to be cognizant of the time. There's another comment about this role appearing to be thorough and expansive. What are some of the challenges that this role may encounter within the organization and its previous experience with DEI roles? Another great question. This one, I would say definitely is one of the reasons why I've stressed curiosity, the ability to develop strong interpersonal relationships. I think probably the biggest challenge, and I'll qualify that in a moment, but the biggest challenge is going to be, how do you work with other people within the organization where you've identified an opportunity to better apply an equity lens or better think about, concepts of diversity to encourage and better serve customers, help them come up with a solution collectively or present a solution to them. How do you do that in a way where you're both then, where that other person is really open to the idea and support? And I will say the qualifier, our goal, our intention, really since we recognize the need to better serve these historically underserved communities, has been to incorporate this work through every position's day-to-day responsibilities. Better serving these customers is not the responsibility of one part of the organization. It's not the responsibility of the DEI services team. It's not the responsibility of our programs team. It's all of our collective responsibility. So you may identify ways that we could be more responsive to the needs of these communities by working, with our finance team. Like maybe it's things like if we could pay our contractors faster, we might encourage more BIPOC-owned businesses to do work with us. It's sitting down then and really working with the finance team to say, hey, this could be an opportunity. How do we come up with a solution together? And really working through that. I think you're going to find a lot of receptivity to that. And you're going to find basic aspects of human nature to that too. And I think that's sort of the nuance of this position, is really helping to navigate some of that so that everybody's working towards these collective solutions. I think that would be one of the bigger challenges here. Lastly here, overall, the work Energy Trust does is what I would describe as environmental and social impact work, which have strong linkages to one another. How does Energy Trust look at their services holistically, analyze and address the linkages between environment and social justice, and seek integrated solutions? Another great question. Probably don't have the perfect answer to that one, at least not right now, because I would say we see ourselves first and foremost as an environmental organization or an energy efficiency and renewable energy organization. We focus our solutions through those tools of energy efficiency and renewable energy or clean energy solutions. So it really is about how to adopt more efficient technologies, more efficient equipment, reduce energy bills, reduce environmental impacts, but also recognizing, and I think this is where the social justice linkage that you're referring to comes into play, that without understanding those social justice and environmental justice issues, it's impossible for us to really engage all of our customers in an equitable way. There are a variety of barriers that prevent different customer groups from participating and in our programs and adopting clean energy solutions. Some of those have to do, say, with historical trust issues of quote unquote government organizations. We may not be a government organization, but we are connected, we're closely connected to one and can be perceived as one. So we first have to be aware of some of this history that different customers may have in terms of their experiences with organizations like us, or organizations they perceive to be like us, and figure out how to address those trust issues. So there is absolutely, you're absolutely right. There's a strong linkage with that. And it always has to relate to how can we help how can we understand that in a way that helps those customers adopt and benefit from these clean energy solutions? Okay. Monica, did you see anything more in the chat? I know you put some links in there, which is great.
Yeah, everyone, I put the links to our position description, the application, as well as the 2024 benefits summary in the chat. So you should all have access to that. And it looks like in terms of questions, we are all caught up.
Yep. Okay, great. Well, and we're right on time. It's 6 o'clock at 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. I don't know where all of you may be calling in from. But I just want to end by saying, really appreciate your participation. The questions were incredibly insightful. I hope they were helpful. And we really look forward to, if you do consider applying to this position, we look forward to reviewing your resume, your cover letter, meeting you in the interviews, and we're really hopeful, especially in a time, I think, where a lot of organizations are starting to disinvest in this type of work. I think it's really important for us to be doubling down on it. And I hope that if you do join us, you will find that to be reality. So thank you, everyone. Hope you all have a wonderful evening. And again, look forward to hopefully meeting some of you in the future. Bye, everyone.